Yeah.
If you start to see certain people that have more of your body type and also something that makes them look nice in it, whatever it is that they're wearing, you start to gravitate, or I start to gravitate toward asking more about where did you get that?
Really highlight the emphasis of the comfort of the shoe and the different styles.
There's some thought or scientific knowledge that's kind of gone into the production of that. I just think they maybe don't put themselves out there enough.
They don't have enough advertising for me. Like I said, I've seen it, but not enough to say I actually want to check out their styles or see what they sell. I never did.
There was definitely that one influencer that I saw that had the trainers on, typical way that I would kind of find out about brands. Maybe more they could do with like influencers and things.
If I've seen an advertisement for one that's someone's wearing them and they look nice, maybe that'd sway me to go and maybe pursue them a bit more and have a look at them a bit more in a shop.
Probably a quite sensible person. I don't necessarily see someone who's like really fashion forward necessarily wearing them.
Even though you're providing me with support and comfort and something that's good for me, I'm interested in more like bold, fun pieces.
I think it's kind of interesting because obviously I have bought from Birkenstocks, and like in terms of style, or they do have some parallels, but I think Birkenstocks definitely from a brand factor has that kind of cool Scandinavian factor, whereas FitFlop doesn't.
attribution, don't they? So
Yeah.
it's like better for, is it like impact and stuff as well?
I know that you can go and buy a white trainer anywhere. So you can go to Primark and buy a white trainer, but it depends on whether you want that quality.
I mean, it's pricey, but I know it's worth it.
Cool. Right, I'm just going to check that the screen share works, because I need sound as well, and that's always fun, isn't it?
And just to channel the note from the ET, let's really focus on, this is going to be a download of loads of thinking and distilling from Luce. So if there's ever a meeting not to have other laptops or phone on, this would be a goodie. So let's channel the ET's request for no laptops open or phones about. Here is mine. I will put it on the floor.
Cool. I'm going to go full screen, which means I can't see any of you lovely faces on screen. But Phil, if somebody puts their hand up or raises the thing to ask a question, someone just shout me and I will stop wittering on and answer your questions. Right, hopefully everyone can see that. When we get to the video, I'll just check that the sound is working before we crack on. But hello, I met some of you virtually recently, just came to your team meeting to say hello and who I am and what on earth I've been doing in the background whilst you're all busy working away. So I'm Lucy, I've been working on some brand and insights work with Phil. The bit I'm going to show you today is a super interesting part, which is all around what the world looks like in terms of people who are out there, what characteristics they share. A little bit about them, you'll see some videos of some of these real people, just help you get your head around who we want to talk to, and then it goes into kind of, so what do we do about these people? How does a segment then become a target audience? Couple of caveats. I'm going to talk through this meeting and assume that no one has done a project like this before. So if there's stuff in here that you already know, amazing. If there's stuff in here that's all new to you, hopefully it will all make sense. I've tried to make it nice and simple. Second caveat is I'm going to use the pronoun she throughout. We did speak to some men as well. There are some male examples in here, but most of it was women. So I will mostly be talking about she all the way through, but there is some male stuff as well. And third caveat is, although I feel like I know these people very well, I didn't actually conduct these interviews. So I know this data incredibly well. There will always be a question that someone has that I probably don't have the answer to, but I can probably go back to the original people who did the interviews and get it. So if there's something really specific you want to know, if I don't know the answer, I can probably still get it for you. So to start off, just to let you guys know kind of how this fits into a larger insights program. So insight is for life, and it's not just marketers, is what I'm going to show you firstly. So the work that that Phil and I've been working on here is quite in-depth stuff. You only do some of this stuff once a year, once every few years even, but obviously it then feeds into some of the stuff that you guys do on a day-to-day basis. And some of the things along the bottom there, you're constantly tracking on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So this is kind of the big stuff, but hopefully it can impact all the stuff that you guys do day to day, but it should be always ongoing and feeding back into each other. It's definitely not just for marketers. So we will be presenting this to the whole company, or a much smaller version of this at some point, because when you get this right and you truly understand who your consumer is, you can really get your whole business to kind of form around it and make sure that every team feels that they understand the importance of knowing who they are. So some of these things on here are you guys, but there's some other teams on here that maybe you wouldn't link to consumer insights, but actually all of those teams can really learn from it. So what we're going to cover today is a little bit about what this project was. We're going to go through brand health, because I think some of you may have seen some of the work that Phil did when he first joined on brand health, but some of you may not have done, so we'll do a super quick touch on that. We'll then go into the segmentation and the target audience overview, which is where I'm going to spend the majority of the time, so I want you guys to feel like you know these women inside out. And then we'll do a so what with that, how do we actually turn that into success. So a couple of vocabulary items first up. Some companies use these words interchangeably. For the focus for this presentation, I would describe these two things as being quite different. Segmentation, I would see as being a map. It is a view of the world, not literally the world, but the people out there that we could possibly want to talk to, and it's got nothing to do with FitFlop yet. That is just a view of who's out there in the world. Targeting is then when you go, okay, what's the what's the route that I want to plot through that map for FitFlop. So, another shoe brand could do a segmentation, and hopefully they would find almost exactly the same as what we found, because that's just about the world and the people in the world, and it should carry across. Targeting is then, so what does that mean for us? So brand health firstly helps us understand what people know about us, and if they have good vibes about us, bad vibes about us, if they've got a clue that we exist or not. Segmentation then does that map piece, so what does the world look like and what are the characteristics that these groups share. We then did some qualitative research, so we went into those different segments and said, well, let's speak to real women who self-identified in those segments and actually really push them to understand their attitudes, their characteristics. And then lastly, we did do some asset testing. There's no asset testing in this deck, but I'm working on a quick summary of that for you guys as well. So we did then show them FitFlop imagery, FitFlop copy, sketches imagery, all sorts of stuff to then say actually what is attracting these women when they're out shopping. So, brand health, our awareness, prompted awareness. So prompted awareness where you give people a long list of brands and they tick the ones that they know. So you've given them the prompt because you put the list there. So prompted awareness in the UK is 29%. It's 11% in the US. Now I'm going to come back to awareness in a bit more depth in a minute, but it's not too bad in the UK. It's pretty low for the US. For those of us who then know us, only 17% have actually then said, yes, I would go and have a look at that. So the numbers are starting to get quite small. If you think we're starting with 29%, and of that, only 7%, 17% would even consider looking at you, you'll see that we're actually getting down to talking to some quite small people if we're not spending on that awareness one. We have an aging audience. That is probably not a surprise to anybody in this room or in this call. So our highest awareness is among older age groups. It's twice as high amongst older age groups as it is among under 35s, and our average customer is 54. We have an amazing product. The people that do know us and own us absolutely love us. We have a huge number of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. I've never seen a brand with this many consistent 5-star reviews. I can hear someone chatting. Can everyone go on mute? And we are way ahead of the competition on that. So the other brand, there are other brands which also have positive reviews, but there tend to be some negative ones that really polarize. We tend to be really positive. Our brand momentum is low. So to understand brand momentum, you ask people, is this a brand you feel is doing stuff? Are they on the up or are they on the down? We are just about in the positive. Again, it's driven by older groups, and the younger groups basically completely wipe that out. So the brand momentum ends up being pretty low in the middle. And some key competitors have got far more momentum than us because people are just seeing them out and about more, so they get more of an impression that they're on the up. And for the ones that do know us, unsurprisingly, they just associate us with comfort, which is great. We're absolutely famous for comfort among the people that know us. In the UK, we also stand out on the word innovation. In the US, we don't so much, interestingly. So comfort happens in both markets, innovation in the UK.
I actually have a quick question.
Yeah.
For the prompted awareness, what is the kind of average on our competitors?
I could pull that out for you, but you would probably, I'm going to quote some numbers now, it'll be totally wrong. Birkenstock is probably up there in the 50s or 60s, okay. I would guess.
Yeah.
Clarks will be super high as well,
okay.
But then you'll have this very long tail. Phil, I don't know if you have this in front of you. If you know the numbers, shout them out.
We are, I don't have the numbers, but we can pull them. But something you tend to find, Georgie, is, which is why Marcia is a bit of a genius, is with brands that are called something that are tangible, like FitFlop, you can kind of get your head around what it is. You tend to naturally get people claiming awareness more than if you called it, I don't know, purple elephant or whatever you might think it would be. So I suspect 29%, 11% are very flattering. If we were to break that down by age group, you will find the vast majority of the prompted awareness is with an older consumer, and it absolutely drops like a stone the younger you go. And it all correlates with when we had that moment where the brand was a real life hack and it was known for doing this incredible thing before we realized we were going to get sued to hell. When that was going, we generated a massive amount of awareness. And since that's gone away, you could probably time it exactly the awareness starts going down with that age group of people.
I've got the age group awareness coming up, so you'll be able to see that split. But the brands that you would expect, you know, especially in shoe world, you're sat there amongst Nike and Adidas and people like that as well. Obviously, their awareness is wildly high.
Yeah.
And then you get a very, very long tail of smaller brands, but I can send you the whole thing.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Thank you.
So now I'm going to start talking about people, because that's the main reason we are here. So at this point, we're talking about segments. This is a view of the world. We are not suggesting yet which of these we might want, but you might start guessing already when I start bringing it up. So the world out there of people kind of thinking about footwear divides into these 5 groups. So the way you do this is you send a survey to people and you ask them questions about what's important to them and how they feel. So there might be a statement in there, for example, like my outfit will impact whether I'm having a good day or not. So they're not kind of like yes, no questions. They're sliding scale questions, and you can start to group what's important to people based on how they answer those questions. So everyday essentials, style setters, fitting and fashion, classic style seekers, and time poor progressive are the groups that you will now, all of this presentation is then color coded to these groups to help you kind of follow along. So super top line, and I'm still not getting in, you'll notice I'm not getting into any demographics, and I'll come on to why I'm doing that in a minute. This is just about how they feel about things and where they are in their style. So it's everyday essentials, as the name suggests. This is someone whose style is all about comfort, practicality, fit. She will come and buy a pair of new shoes when the current pair she has are wearing out. That's pretty much it. And so because of that, she's going to choose value. She's looking for a versatile style that can get her from a dog walk to lunch with her friends. So really just looking for an everyday something. Doesn't put an awful lot of consideration into so. Style setters, on the complete flip side, this person is fashionable, although obviously style is subjective. So what you might already get a view in your head of what this person looks like, but hang on, because it could still be lots of different things. But this person is fashionable, they're definitely unique, and they are creative. And she buys when she wants, and she wants to be staying ahead of what's going on. She wants to be known for looking a certain way, or for her outfits to be commented on. So this is someone who a lot of her brain space is taken up by how she physically looks. So she is always going to be choosing things that are trendy, they're newest things. She's probably the first of her friends to buy into this type of item. You then got fitting in fashion. So there's some strange adjectives to describe this one, but it's quite an interesting person. So this person on the one hand plays it quite safe. They're quite a high street shopper. This person is not very confident, and so they don't really own their style yet. They kind of follow different trends, they try out different things, but they end up actually being quite neutral, and they can have some quite erratic style things in their wardrobe where they've tried different styles for them and they've not quite worked out. So this one is definitely a follower. She might see quite a well-known influencer wearing something and then go, I'll buy the version of that I can afford. But it's definitely all about following on. This person is not breaking any ground in creativity, but they do care about how they look. They just haven't quite figured out yet where they fit in. This person is quite likely to choose things like dupes of other things. So rather than buying Birkenstock, they've seen Birkenstocks out and about, but they might go for a safer next version of it, which they perceive to be better value. But they're still trying to follow along with what they're seeing. You then have a classic style seeker. So this person, they do care about how they look. They want to be put together, but they're in kind of a timeless way. So comfort and quality still matter to them. They're going to buy pieces that they know they'll be able to wear over and over again, but they've kind of honed how they look. You could go as far as saying this person possibly has a bit of a uniform about the way they dress. They know the pieces that fit them, and they go back to them time and time again. They also buy to replace things. They don't tend to go out and buy just because they fancy something new. It still tends to be driven by a need to buy, but they will invest a little bit more than this person on the left. So this one was buying out of absolute necessity and really cared about value. That classic style seeker is willing to pay a little bit more because she does care about how put together she looks, but she's still going to look for versatile styles. And then you have this one on the right, which time poor progressive is the word. Think of that as being, this is a busy progressive person. This is definitely someone who cares about how they look. They are modern, they do know what trends are, but they do not give up as much brain space towards trends in fashion as that style setter one there. So that's a slightly more grown-up style. Again, they probably are a little bit mature in saying, I'm going to buy the things that suit me versus blindly following what's trending. So this person could also buy when she wants, so there is the money there, but it's a much more considered purchase versus the real fashion follower groups. And she'll choose very kind of authentically stylishly things. Okay, so you'll notice I haven't talked about anyone's age yet. I haven't talked about their families or anything like that. This is just things that group them together based on how they feel about their shopping habits and how important style and dressing is to them. Now let's have a look at demographics and who these people tend to be. So you still get huge variation inside these groups, but this helps you understand who they tend to be. So the number at the top is how many of these people there actually are. So we take the 100% of the world that's out there, over a quarter of them are in this group that just doesn't care about or doesn't think about clothes and fashion at all. You can see that as a slightly older group. They tend to have a low income bracket. That's why they're looking for a value offering, and you can see that their average shoe spend is quite low. So probably unsurprising based on the behaviours and the characteristics that we just looked. Style setters are a much smaller group, but their spending power is big because they are never not looking at new stuff. So what's interesting about this one, I think it's easy in your head to think a style setter and think it's a young person straight away. Not at all. This one really transcends across all of the age groups. You can see there are still plenty of people who are 55 and over who care very much about following trends and have got the money to spend. So that's a particularly interesting group when it comes to age. Fitting in fashion, that is quite a young group. And again, that makes sense, right? This person's not quite confident in their style yet. They try lots of different things. They tend to buy fast fashion. The income isn't quite there. You can see with those ones, they do actually spend quite a lot. So their average shoe spend is quite high. However, it's lots of low priced things. Again, because they're buying fast fashion, they're trying tons of different things out. Classic style seeker. Sounds like an old person. It does tend to be an older person, but again, there are still younger classic style seekers. There are still people who have a bit of a uniform about the way that they dress, regardless of what age they are. They've kind of honed their style pretty early and they stick to it. They do tend to be older. And then time for progressive, this group, a real mix of ages. This is slightly younger than the style setter. Also quite likely to have a family, that group there. So when they come across as busy, when we're saying busy progressive people, they're likely to be busy because they're juggling a little bit. So that's why there's not as much space in their brain to just be thinking about clothes and fashion all day. They've got a lot more things on their mind, but they do have money to spend and they do care about investing in nicer pieces. That's a little bit about who they are from a demographic point of view. So what we then say is, okay, so those are the segments. How does a segment become an audience for us to go, okay, we're interested in this group as potential FitFlop customers? So firstly, like, do their habits and attitudes actually make sense for us? Are they actually worth money to us? You spend an awful lot of money going after some of these groups, where they haven't got the spending power. It's kind of not good return for us. Do they know us now? Like, do some of these groups know that FitFlop exists? Some of them already, you're probably thinking, which ones are probably our audiences right now. But you know, what's the job we have to do if we're going after a completely new group of people versus people that already know us? And it's worth bearing in mind at this point that different segments can have very different jobs for us. We don't just have to choose one audience and go all in on them. You can try and do slightly different strategies on different audiences. So this is how we then start narrowing down what the FitFlop view of that world is. So when you have a look at that value question that I mentioned to actually understand where there is money for us to go after, because ultimately we want to grow, there are two groups which stand out really quickly. That's the style setters, unsurprisingly, and the time poor progressives. They both are on a higher income. They do spend on shoes and they are willing to spend on quality. So you'll notice that the fitting in fashion group and style seekers do actually have quite good market value as well, but it's the wrong type of value for us probably, especially that fitting in fashion one. Classic style seekers are quite good for us, but fitting in fashion, the reason they're spending so much is because they're buying loads of cheap stuff. So we have to go, okay, there is opportunity there, there's money, but it's going to take a lot to convince that person to spend on a single pair of shoes the amount that we charge for a single pair of shoes. So you start seeing here some people that might look like good opportunities for us. So this is just a reminder of what the world looks like and how it breaks down at the moment. So that biggest group was the essentials group, the smallest group was the style setters. We then send the same survey to the FitFlop CRM database to understand how our people compare to what the world looks like. Does anyone want to guess what the largest group for FitFlop customers was? Phil already knows the answer. Anyone want to guess?
Go on, Rachel, have a go. I can see you're competitive.
Everyday essentials.
I'd say everyday essentials as well.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay. Anyone else? Our biggest group by a very large margin.
Oh.
Interesting.
We do have a good number of those everyday essentials though, so you're not wrong, and I'll come on to why that is in a minute. But as you can see, there's a slightly different view to show that over-index and under-index. So the solid colour is the market and the dotted one is FitFlop. So you can really see where we're over-indexing versus the market and under-indexing. So, you know, almost 20% of our customers are those everyday essentials. We don't talk to the fitting and fashion people at all, which makes sense. They don't spend enough money on a single pair of shoes for us to have really reached them. Style setters, we actually over-index on. I think this is super interesting because I bet none of you would have guessed that we have more than the average number of those style setter people. Classic style seekers are huge, and time poor progressive, we really under-index with that group, which is interesting because everything about their attitudes to fashion should fit with us quite well, but they don't at the moment. So we then have a look at which of these groups actually know we exist. So taking those awareness numbers back again that I showed you at the beginning. Now, interestingly, this is what you would expect to see in the UK. The higher awareness groups, so the style setters and the classic style seekers, they're the ones with the highest awareness that FitFlop exists, are also the ones where we've got the highest penetration of customers. So that makes sense. That's what you'd expect to see. In the US, it's just low across the board. So it doesn't look like there's been much targeted or long-term brand work done in the US that's actually helping that awareness by group. And you will see in a minute what's driving that UK awareness. Oh, no, that's coming up. We'll come back to awareness. Right. So time to say goodbye to some of those. You can probably guess from what I've been saying already which ones of those we're going to just stop talking about because they're not the right people for us. So we're going to say goodbye to this everyday essentials group. What I mean by that is even though they're 20% of our business, they're a very deal-seeking shopper. And I know that we have stopped doing as much promotional stuff. So whilst this person does quite like FitFlop, and we've got a number of them, we under-index versus the market, but they're probably coming to us during those periods where in the past we've done really deep discounts because they've sought out that value. So they are a big group, but they don't buy very often. You can't tempt them in with new season things because they only buy when they need to replace something, and you know, they don't spend a lot when they do. So whilst you may still capture some of them, they're probably not the best place for us to spend money. And then the next one that we will lose will be the fitting and fashion groups. Again, they shop a lot, but they don't spend a lot when they do. A lot of them are under 35. It's a very young group, and we know that our awareness for the under 35s is super low. So we would have to spend an awful lot of money finding this person and convincing them on the cost of one of our pairs of shoes. So we won't talk to this person anymore, which leaves us with 3. So for the rest of this presentation, I'm only going to talk to you about these 3 groups of people in a bit more depth. So here's the watch out and bewaring of averages on that awareness data. So we see that style setters, the awareness of us among style setters is 40%. You're like, as a brand marketer, that's decent, I'll take that. When you peel that back and look at it by age, it's hugely skewed by older groups. So you're looking at style setters, you're like, this is a big opportunity, it's a big spending power, there's loads of them, there's quite a lot of young ones. The young ones barely know we exist. So you've got already some slightly different strategies needed to attack those. Whereas if you look at the time poor progressives group, it does punch with the 45 to 54 group, but overall it's lower across the board. So the group, the job we need to do with that group is very different to the StyleSetter group. And again, in America, it's just quite low across the board for us to really know what's been going on there.
May I ask a question, Lucy?
You may.
Is it possible within the data to split these down by any smaller increments? I'm just figuring there's quite a difference between 35 and 44. Just want to know, is there a big drop off between 30 and 35 and 40 and 44?
You want that plotted on a different shape of graph, don't you, Phil? I can ask.
Thank you.
Because I've already had it split into these, so yeah, maybe. So in sort of like 5-year increments or something.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, yeah. To see where the drop off is.
Yeah. And do that. And then just to make the point again about the flip-flop aging customer, that very ugly little table on the top right-hand side is just, it shows you the average age of the people in that total segment in the world versus our average age of that person. And as you can see, we are significantly above on all of them. I don't think it's surprising to anyone in this room.
So Time Ball Progressive, our average age is genuinely 58 for all of them.
Yeah. No. So the average age of a Time Ball Progressive is 39, but a flip-flop Time Ball Progressive 58.
Wow.
And 58 is the average age for each of those segments.
Correct.
Is that just a happy accident, or is that because that's just the average age of a flip-flop consumer?
No, I have checked, and one of them comes in at like 57 point something, and another one comes in something like that.
So that all of that, no matter the attitude, they've all come into the brand at a certain point in time, like you were speaking to earlier, right?
Correct. That's exactly what is happening here. So if you think, if that person, the StyleSetter in the market, their average age is 43 and ours is 58, well, where were ours 15 years ago? Flip-flop for the first time.
Yeah.
Probably directly in the market for wanting to have a great body, but not having time to go to the gym.
Probably those people. Yeah. Cool. So let's meet them in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to play some videos. These are not super shiny, jazzy videos, but I do think they will help you see these real people and maybe lose some kind of ideas that you might already, some stereotypical ideas you might already be forming in your head about who these people are and what they look like. So I will just check. They'll give me a thumbs up if the sound starts playing, if my mouse can find it. Just moving. The screen's gone wild.
don't they? So it's like better for, is it like impact and stuff as well?
I know that you can go and buy a white trainer anywhere. So you can go to Primark and buy a white trainer, but it depends on whether you want that quality.
I mean, it's pricey, but I know it's worth it.
So that was our classic style seeker. So you can see they tend to be older, but they are not just all old ladies. They're really not. But she often is. This person's very family orientated. She's kind of a matriarch of the family. In fact, she sees that as her role. A lot of them kind of said this. So that drives her priorities. That's why she's not thinking about fashion all the time, because she's just got other things that she cares more about at the stage of life that she's at. She is financially comfortable, but she's careful. So like that lady at the end was like, I will look for quality, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to spend a wild amount. There's still a number that I'll go to. So she tends to be kind of classic, oversized. I do have some photos in the next slide of their wardrobes and kind of items that they own, just to give you an idea. She knows what suits her. She's not chasing the trends. And this idea of age appropriateness comes up in every segment. A little part of my heart broke about that, because all of these women have got a thing about, well, I'm this age and I cannot wear this. But this group really, that does play for them. Like I said, she will mostly buy when she needs to replace. This is the group that most likely to value the comfort technology and to understand that there's something different about the shoe, and that's how they justify the higher spend to themselves. But they're quite brand loyal. So so some of those women did own FitFlop, and they own several pairs of FitFlop. Then there's other ones like that lady said, I need to break out my Nike bubble, because she knows it works for her and the style is fine for her. She'll just keep going back to them. So they can be hard to break through. But the good news is we have broken through in this group. 50% of our people are in this group, so that's positive. Tends to be an in-store shopper because she wants convincing on that she's going to spend money on something that's worth it. And definitely looks to her friends and things for brand ideas as well. And you can see there some of the brands that she likes. I don't think it's surprising the type of brands this person is drawn to. So there's the ladies you just saw. So here's a couple of things from their wardrobes. You can see quite plain, quite oversized, quite loose. She doesn't want to wear tight things. She doesn't want to feel like she's not dressing appropriately for her age. And she wears things that she feels comfortable in versus what other people think that she should be wearing. And here's some of their shoes. So we have split these out into younger and older just to see if there were any trends between them. But you can see fairly plain, fairly versatile styles from brands that you would expect to see from these groups. So that was our classic style seekers.
Lucy, may I ask, could you just quickly just set up how we recruited these people, just so everyone knows who these people are and how we got to them?
Yeah. So we had the segments that were done last year. So the way you get those segments, like I said, is you send out big surveys with questions where people rank how they feel about things from 1 to 10. When we then establish where the groupings were, so that would fit out a big graph, and you can start to draw a ring around, okay, there's a group of people that sit here, there's a group of people that sit here, and that's where we start naming those segments. We then went back to people within those segments and started wanting to get to know them more, so you invite them to take part. We made sure we had a mixture of people who have owned FitFlop, people who haven't, so that we see both sides. We made sure we had a mix of age groups, and we did this in the US and the UK. I should have said that at the beginning. Everything in here is just US and UK. You'll hear some more American ladies coming up. I think that's, have I missed anything, Phil?
No, all good.
No?
What, Lucy, sorry if I missed it, but how many were in each group? Just out of interest.
So these ones were actually not focus groups. These are one-to-one interviews, and I think from memory they did about 35 to 40 of these interviews. So that it's pretty in depth, definitely enough for us to have heard the same ideas coming through from them.
Yeah, and that's a key point, right? Because you've always got a question as you get into insight, how reflective of this is on reality. This is pretty good. I've worked at much bigger organizations who've been much thinner. So if we were to repeat all this work 100 times with bigger sets, it's going to be very, very close to the truth we're seeing here. Where it would change is if we started to extend it out into different markets, or we were to repeat it in 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. This is a very solid depth of segmentation, and then qual on top of it to make sure that you're not just kind of drawing stereotypes. So I would agree with Bill on that. Who do we have next? I can't remember, but it will tell you at the beginning. I think we're seeing the style setters. So you've gone from the very conservative style ones that don't have a lot of space in their brain for thinking about clothes and fashion to this lot who I think you're going to enjoy.
Quite sensible person. I don't necessarily see someone who's like really fashion forward necessarily wearing them.
Even though you're providing me with support and comfort and something that's good for me, I'm interested in more like bold, fun pieces.
I think it's kind of interesting because obviously I have bought from Birkenstocks, and like in terms of style, or they do have some parallels, but I think Birkenstocks definitely from a brand factor has that kind of cool Scandinavian factor, whereas Flip-Flop doesn't.
The fact that one of those women even had to mention that she thinks about cocktail events differently just shows you how these women differ from the last one. She's like, well, obviously a cocktail, I wouldn't like that. Wasn't even thinking about cocktail. Okay. So hopefully what you've gleaned from that one is that although these are style setters, that doesn't just mean straight away that they are young and wearing what each one of us individually might perceive as trendy. This is about their attitudes to how people see them and the clothes that they that they wear. This is a group that curates looks for themselves, really thinks about how other people are going to perceive what she's wearing. They tend to be ambitious. That this group would feel very strongly that how they look at work is going to impact their career. That's the type of attitude that this person has. There we go. So as you saw, very positive straight away. She's very energetic, quite lively, quite creative, very socially active. I live in LA, so I'm always going to events every weekend. Like just someone that is out and about a lot, and this person tends to be more affluent, probably linked to that ambition and that career focus. Very creative, likes to curate looks, so won't just think about one piece individually. She will already be thinking in her head how she's going to style it with other accessories and things. And a good, like she's having a bad day if someone has not commented on her outfit or mentioned that something that she's wearing looks good. Slight different here, we do start to see splits between the older and the younger ones in this group. So the older style setters, they do have a more mature approach to following fashion. They don't just blindly buy whatever's in the window at Zara. They do know themselves a little bit better, but they're still very bold and creative and willing to pick that bit out of that fashionable outfit and integrate it into what they are wearing. The trouble with these guys, they're not brand loyal at all. Like, because they're being advertised to constantly, because they are constantly looking for new stuff, they can name a ton of brands and they're willing to look at a ton of brands to find the thing that they want. Everyone is going after this group, which is what makes them difficult to get. She will indulge in luxury items, but this is not a group that likes things with big flashy logos on. They don't perceive that to be how you are stylish. It's the kind of more tailored, cool pieces that they like versus just buying a t-shirt that's got a big logo on. And we found that the older style setters in this group, this was a group that leaned into the fact that when they were younger, they made poor shoe choices, they wore too many high heels and squeezed their feet into shoes that didn't fit them properly, and they now have problems. That's where we found these people, and they all leaned into that and were like, yep, did that, can't do that anymore, now I'm suffering for it. Loads of Instagram use. Unsurprisingly, on this group spends a lot of time on the discovery page on Instagram. They follow a lot of brands, they follow a lot of designers, and the older style setters of this group, this is a stereotype, but I think it did carry through here. There's something a little bit ritualistic about sitting down once a month and actually looking through fashion magazines and getting a huge amount of joy and inspiration from actually going kind of old school and looking through the magazine. And there was just some of the brands that she was into, but on average, like compared to the other segments, this lady can just name so many brands because she's just constantly looking and she's constantly being advertised to. Someone has a hand up. Who is it?
I have a hand up on behalf of UD with the question, how much do style setters represent in the customer mix?
Thank you, Phil.
Do you mean how many of these has FitFlop got?
Correct. Yeah, so you were saying like in the beginning that the classic ones represent like kind of half of the customers, right? So how much do style setters represent?
Let me just go back and we can check. You do over-index on these, so we do have more of these than there are. So 18%. 18. Yeah. So
okay, quite a big group.
13% of the world is this group, but we have, they're in the FitFlop world, there are 18% of them. So you are doing something right for this person. However, it's the older end of this segment, like we keep saying.
And you've got that broken down in your age sheets as well, haven't you? In those bar graphs, just to show that the mix of that 18%, the age groups they fall into.
I don't know if I've got that for FitFlop. I've got awareness and total segment by age. I'll see if we've got enough data points to do it for FitFlop.
Cool. Thank you.
We should do. Okay, so let's have a little look in her wardrobe. It's fun. Again, we split this out between younger and older. In there, you can see some pink feathers. You can see a thigh-high python boot. You can see a Chanel trainer. You can see lots of cool jazzy prints, lots of colours. So exactly what you'd expect to see with this group, like just very, very creative wardrobe. As I said, she loves getting complimented. That's kind of what she lives for. her worst nightmare is feeling like she's blending in, or that she's turned up in the wrong outfit to an event, like feeling that she's over or underdressed for an event. Absolute nightmare, this person. That's what she cares about, is having the right thing to wear always.
I can feel Rachel identifying pretty heavily with this person.
Do we have one of these in the room? Someone wanna stand up? Yeah. Okay, this group is the time poor progressive. So think busy modern people is another way of saying that. We struggled to name this group, didn't we, Phil? They're a tough group. You'll see why in a second.
I mean, they look beautiful, but they're not comfortable.
A mom perspective and running around a lot, and you're constantly on your feet, you're always on the go with your kid, and you want to feel comfortable because you're moving so much. But style is so important.
When we went to Disneyland, I purposely looked for a shoe that was really comfy and didn't make your feet hot and stuff. So in that side, yeah, the technology you do look into, sort of thing. I wouldn't go out in probably like a little crop top sort of thing, because I just don't think that suits me. Whereas I know some people do and it looks great.
So I definitely feel best in kind of looser clothes. My body shape's changed and I've gained weight and then I've lost weight, and so I don't know what fits me and what doesn't at the moment.
Sometimes these influencers that I see on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, they have these models' bodies that I'm like, well, this isn't helping me. It looks beautiful, but it looks beautiful because it's on you.
Follow people that do makeup. I follow people who are into fashion, just regular people. They're definitely people who are like me, on a budget. So they want to look cute on a budget.
It is also good to see someone wearing them so you can gauge what they look like on as well, sort of thing.
If you start to see certain people that have more of your body type and also something that makes them look nice in it, whatever it is that they're wearing, you start to gravitate, or I start to gravitate toward asking more about, where did you get that?
Really highlight the emphasis of the comfort of the shoe and the different styles.
There's some thought or scientific knowledge that's kind of gone into the production of that. I just think they maybe don't put themselves out there enough.
They don't have enough advertising for me. Like I said, I've seen it, but not enough to say I actually went to check out their styles or see what they sell. I never did.
There was definitely that one influencer that I saw that had the trainers on, typical way that I would kind of find out about brands. Maybe more they could do with like influencers and things.
If I've seen an advertisement for one that's someone's wearing them and they look nice, maybe that would sway me to go and maybe pursue them a bit more and have a look at them a bit more in a shop.
Cool. So this group was really interesting. Hopefully you can see from a lot of things they were saying, our product meets the needs of this group a lot, but they just don't know we exist. So we're only at about 7% for this group, and our awareness is down low, down in the late teens and early 20s, I think. So this is a really interesting group. So they are very busy. They tend to be younger, but you can still see there's a mix of ages there. They do have money to spend, but again, they have to prioritize what they spend it on. So they'll be a little bit more thoughtful about the things that they buy. They definitely do not want to be seen as mumsy. This is a big group of women who are super smart. They're juggling. They don't want to be defined by just being a mum and therefore being perceived as being mumsy. So they see their style as more of being like a bit grown up cool. So they have style, but they certainly don't have the time anymore to just pursue tons of trends and things. She's very, very conscious that she's left, again, like real age insecurities here with a lot of these women. Playing with a flair, one of the women in there said, and I think that's a really good way of describing how this group's style comes out. So flattering, modern, definitely don't want to be seeing something too young, but they definitely don't want to be seen as mumsy either. Heavy online shopper and heavy shopper of big retailers that sell lots of different brands because it's efficient for her. She can go on and she can find everything she needs in one place. So you see a lot of Next, John Lewis amongst this group because she can buy stuff for the whole family while she's there, and she can go on and filter, and it's nice and easy. Because of that, she also values the kind of like free delivery and things like that, and quick delivery. So there's a kind of service element to this here as well. Likes influencers, but only ones that she feels are believable. So she, again, doesn't want to follow ones whose body type she sees as being, not right for her, and she wants to follow influencers who she believes could be as busy as she is, and therefore that the things, the styles they're choosing could be useful for her as well. And yeah, so a lot of COS, a lot of Arket, lots of whistles. So when we say grown-up style, this is someone that maybe was a Zara shopper when they were younger, and as they're growing up and they invest slightly more in better tailoring and better versions of those basics, lots of COS, lots of whistles, lots of Arket, that type of thing. So this person does really still care about the style. It's very different approach to it, and the amount of brain space they allow for it compared to these style setters. Have a little look in her wardrobe. Sorry guys, there's quite a lag between my screen and yours. Here we go. So looking for everyday comfort, grown up cool style, does not want to look frumpy, does not want to look out of touch. Clothes and shoes and things. Here we go. So, there are some trends in there and some key pieces in there that you can see would be very versatile. But if you look at the picture on the top right, this is still someone that wants to have the right shoe for each occasion that she's going to. She's not sort of given up and just, I'll wear trainers for everything. She still does really care about how she's perceived. But as you can see, a lot of them, when they're at home on those videos, they're wearing athleisure. They're kind of like, that's fine. There's still a cool way for me to be comfortable. I've not given up. I still care about how I look, but I'm also realistic about all the things that I'm juggling in my life, and I've got to get through my day, and I can't do that in a pair of heels. So that is the Time Poor Progressive group. Our biggest challenge there is, like I said, the awareness piece. From a positioning point of view, we should make a lot of sense to that person, but they just haven't seen us before, or they know us because their mum used to own us. They're at that stage in their life that they've got this loose awareness in the back of their mind that their mum used to have a pair. Now need to convince her that it's for her. So 2 of those groups, I found when I started working on this project, I do slightly start to smush together sometimes. So I put a slide in here that particularly pulls apart these 2 groups that do care about style, just so you can see the differences. So the style setters, very fashion forward, definitely don't copy. They're all about being edgy and styling very curated things, whereas the person on the right spends a lot less time thinking about curating a look and will instead buy things that they know will be quite versatile in their wardrobe. The one on the left is much more experimental than the one on the right. The one on the right is kind of like, I know myself a bit more now, and I'm going to stick to the things that I know work for me, but then I will add in the odd trendy piece that comes along. The one on the left is more likely to splurge on something. So will spend a lot of money on one item because she wants it. The one on the right will think a lot harder before spending on one item because she wants to make sure it's actually going to be in her life for a long time, it's going to go with lots of her outfits, and ultimately she's got lots of other priorities to spend her money on. So just trying to pull those groups apart a little bit, because they both like some quite cool retailers and cool brands, so I found myself sometimes mixing them together, but just to separate them apart. I'm going to come back to men if we've got some time, because I want to make sure we get to the actual target audience framework first. So we will come back to the chaps if we have time. So, did that all make sense? Yes? So next is, so what we do with all that? That's still 3 massive groups of people with very different views of the world and very different priorities in the world. So what do we actually do with that so that we can hand this over to Danielle's wonderful team, and we can actually make these people real and actually target them and understand how we can go after them. So now we know who they are. We've got quite a good understanding from that work of what they're looking for and what turns them on to shoe shopping and what they like about a certain type of shoe. We know where to find them because we now know where they shop. We know the type of journey they go on. We know the types of things they're influenced by. So now we want to understand how to actually attract and convince them. So we need to start putting things in front of these women and actually trying to understand if we can bring them over to our side. So this is where they get divided up into 3 different types of audiences. So this is that crossover before when I was talking about segmentation, which is what the world looks like. We're now going over to targeting, which is like, so what does FitFlop do to go through that map of the world and choose its people? So we have split these into 3 different groups. The first one is Accelerate. So the 2 groups that sit under the Accelerate pillar are the groups that we're already doing really well with. We are clearly already doing something that makes these women like us. We have lots of classic style seekers already. And for the style setters, the older end of the style setters group, they're what's driving our over-index with style setters as well. So the job to do with them is simply to find more of them. Like, we clearly know what these women look like with all the data that we must hold, and the kind of, as we pull people through the funnel and convert. So the role here is to create lookalikes, use that CRM data and actually just go out and find more of these people, because clearly they're the lowest hanging fruit. I hate the phrase lowest hanging fruit, but they are. So the job there is to just accelerate what we're already doing because it's clearly working. The second group is an acquisition group. So the win group, these are people that we're not currently winning with. So we know that our awareness among the time poor progressives is low, despite the fact that we have a product that should serve their needs pretty well. We know that we don't attract them at the moment. So there's about 20% of them in the market and we have about 7, something like that. So we know there's opportunity there. They just don't know we exist. And then the style setters, the 35s, 55s, so that kind of middle part of that style setter group. Again, mixed levels of awareness. The younger ones less aware, good awareness, 45 to 55 though. So we need to go and get those people. So if we have money to spend on media, those are the people we need to go and get and talk to, possibly for the first time. So that's going to be kind of where the bulk of your money probably goes, to trying to find, because the amount of headroom for growth in those 2 groups is huge for us. So we've got different jobs to do with them. The style setters, we do need to convince them that we're not for their mum, and that we will work for them. You know, they're not 18 anymore. They can definitely start buying slightly more sensible shoes. So there's a job to do there on style for those guys, and just making sure that we're in their mindset when they're thinking about shoes. And then the time poor progressives, this is about really like first time awareness. Most of them just don't know we exist yet. So for them, it'll be around presenting FitFlop as actually kind of part of that toolkit. This woman is so busy, she's constantly looking for ways to just get her day done a little bit easier, a little bit better. For those guys, it's where does FitFlop fit in that? All of them said, you know, I can't have my feet be the thing that stops me going about the day I need to do. So there's a great job there, and we've got the technology to deliver that. We can't go straight in with the tech with those people. They need to understand that we exist first, and we give them benefit. And then lastly, the group called Develop on the right-hand side. So those style setters that are under 35 at the moment have no idea if we exist. And that makes absolute sense that they wouldn't know we exist. They're following tons of brands. really on trend. They're being targeted by everyone in the fashion world, I would imagine, because everyone is trying to get younger consumers to be brand loyal from when they're young, because we know they don't carry it through with them. This is not a group it would be wise for us to spend a lot of money on, because they're not going to be our customers probably for quite a long time. However, there are still things you can do to kind of place yourself in their mindset a little bit and become culturally relevant to them. So you wouldn't spend a ton of paid media on these people, because you're not going to get your money back from them for a very, very, very long time, if ever. However, you can still be culturally relevant to them with some, clever use of influencers that we know work for them, and use a kind of owned and earned strategy to just at least be on those people's radars. Because in 10 years' time, they might be more our person, and when they're looking for slightly more sensible shoe choices, that little grain that we have maybe planted when they were very young kind of stays in there with them, and they come back to us one day. So you sort of get slightly different jobs to do for each of those groups of people. Bill.
In fact, Rachel put her hand up just before me. So Rachel, do you want to ask your question first?
Sorry. I was just wondering, out of that younger demographic, how young would we be looking? Like, you're talking 18-year-olds or 25 plus? Like, because obviously that's very different, isn't it?
Yeah. So the data starts 18, I think, 18 to 35. We can probably split it down. I would agree with you that whilst an 18-year-old is different to someone who's 33, 34, rather than thinking about their age, this is about their characteristics and the way they view the world. So they're probably buying different brands because they've got different levels of cash available to them, for example, probably following slightly different influences. But if we go back to that very first part around how do they feel about how they're perceived in the world and focus on that, you should still be able to find some red thread through those people, regardless of if they're 21 or if they're 33, 34. But yes, you are right. We can probably break it down even more than that.
Okay.
My question was... Did that answer your question, Rach? You can nod. Yes. Mine was two-part. One, exactly the same as Rachel's. It'd be cool to try and work out, again, is there a drop-off where it just becomes too hard? But the other one, I'm sure some of us on this call would have experienced it. Although the return on development audience is quite long tail, every now and again, if you keep on fishing in that pot, slightly by mistake, you can just hit gold, and you can get a collaborative product, or you can put a new product in our range that suddenly catches fire. So that will be the other side of it, that quite often, without any real strategic intent, a lot of brands have made a lot of money because they bothered to fish in a younger, trend-driven pool, and something gets picked up, which is why we would happily over-index in Tammy's side of the world, looking at younger influencers that are more trend-driven, because when it picks up, it can just change the world for you.
Yeah, the Crocs effect, basically. Okay, any more questions on that? This is super top line, by the way. You've got people on your team who will be able to take this down to incredible levels of depth and detail around how we actually fish these people. This is kind of the approach, and lands the point around how there are different audiences play different roles for us. You've got your kind of bankers, then you've got your kind of people that you're going to try and keep warm, and then you've got some people that you just need to go and get for the business to grow. That's the end. So last thing to say is, obviously, this is not the end of this. This is a repeat of that slide at the beginning. It goes full circle. So this is the start, and gives everyone a really nice version of the truth to ground themselves on. But now there's so much that you guys can go away and do, and start testing and learning, and actually seeing whether these hypotheses that we now have around the strategies we think we need to get these people actually work. So what will happen from now on is the way that data was all broken down by those segments and those audiences. When you do a brand health check again, which I think you're doing annual, Phil?
Yeah.
6 months annual. So that brand health bit at the beginning, where we looked at how many people are aware, what people think about us, you can do that again in a year, and you'll be able to split it by those groups. It will help you see whether you're actually moving the needle on anyone, or changing the perception on any of them. So this is kind of your starting point, and a nice truth for everyone to hopefully align around. And as you go, you'll start shifting that truth as you start learning and go on. Would you like to? Oh, there's a hand up.
Hello. I was just thinking, in terms of how we talk to these customers, should we be trying to find a way that resonates with all of them, or should we be very much trying to treat them differently and talk to them in different ways?
Did Phil tell you to ask that question? That
No.
is Phil's favourite thing.
Well, no, I'm just thinking about it because what sits under me is conversion rate optimization on the site and personalization and all those other kind of things. So it all feeds into that as well.
Yeah, that really was my favourite question in the world.
What's the answer? What's the answer?
Well, the answer has got to be, it has to be yes and yes, right? But it really just depends on the channels we're using. We become incredibly schizophrenic unless we have a central brand message, something which can connect all of these consumers. So wherever we're using any kind of broad reach media, whenever you walk into a store before you go down into particular merch areas, we'll make sure that we have a story that can resonate right across these people. Where it becomes really interesting, particularly in your world, is where we can start building profiles and we can start tailoring off the back of that. So we will start be able to using obviously performance marketing methods to identify these consumers, which we can start building much better profiles with our Google data, and then delivering messaging which is much more aligned to the different people in these groups. And I would love it, and certainly the anticipation's got to be, as we move forward, our go-to-market packs are much more focused on this particular consumer group in these seasons. How are we going to best get after them? Because if I think about Tammy's world, you know, she would already, I imagine, be thinking, I can. Oh, someone needs to come off mute. You know, there are going to be very different types of influencers that she would want to work with for these different groups, you know, sort of versus others. So we will cover most of them. We're also going to learn a lot, right? Because all this is lovely theory, and we're going to learn very, very quickly from a performance marketing point of view. Do you know what? We're actually getting twice as much pickup among time poor progressives in that wing segment, and it is half the CTS, the acquisition cost as style setters. We're actually going to weight more heavily that way. So this is very much the starting point, but we will make sure we reflect it in the segmentation, because right now we don't really know who our audience is. We just sort of say the same thing to broadly everyone, which isn't very efficient, obviously.
I think it's going to really supercharge all of the work we're doing when we think about customer acquisition and all of the media work. It's like a complete change of how we do things. And yeah, I'm really excited to start divvying these buckets up. And your point around influencers, I think that was the thing that really like broke my brain when we were chatting with Lucy the other day, because I was just like, oh yeah, like it is such a different person that we need to satisfy each of these groups, and one doesn't have to undo the work of the other. They can all coexist as long as we're super clear on who we're trying to attract. So yeah, I'm really excited about.
And it
So
should make
through this whole presentation twice, Danielle. You're a superstar.
I like to go through it. The first time is just like digesting. The second time is like the more ideas. So
So I think it's a really good watch out as well. So as you know, we're also working on the brand evolution project. It's a really good watch out to make sure that the work we do there doesn't focus so much on trying to get all these new people that you wildly alienate your core customer. So it's a big watch out that these classic style seekers, we might not see them as the cool, sexy ones, but they're the ones that are propping up 50% of the business right now, right? So when we're working on the new messaging, working on new visuals and imagery and all that stuff, we can't take it in a direction that's going to alienate that group, but equally we need to find enough of a refresh to bring in those new groups and, you know, shake off some of the kind of past perceptions that they've got of us. So it's a really good question as to kind of how we do all of this when sometimes you might only get the chance to say one thing and it's got to work for everyone.
Danielle, put your hand up.
hello. One thing I'm just thinking about, Lucy, is, you know, you mentioned you'd done some creative testing, like in the world of this Accelerate group. are they responding to our creative, or are they again just were really into us 15 years ago and they haven't moved away since? I think that's what I'm trying to ask myself, is it as easy as we just go and find more people? Because what was their passion for the brand ignited far away, like time wise, or is what we're doing today really appealing to them?
It's a really
Does that
good
make sense?
question. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So let me go and look more specifically, because the creative testing we did was in focus groups. So it's a little bit more, everyone's in a bunch all chatting. So it's harder to kind of split out what individual people or groups wanted. Something that we do see though is that classic style seeker is something that we're doing really well right now that they love. That is the group that does recognize that we're doing something different with our shoes. And you saw that. I love that lady in that video who actually goes, oh, don't they do this? And they've actually got an idea that the shoe does something different. That is appealing to this person. And we came across people who said, oh, I know I like the micro wobble board. So I go on the website and I filter it by the micro wobble board because I know that one works for me. So I think there's probably a good degree there of they like us and they keep coming back to us because they've had a good product experience. But also where in the past we have been a bit more bold with tech and the claims, that consumer has gripped onto it more than the others because she's more likely to have some of the problems that our shoes solve. But I do still have feedback from everyone on creative, and I can summarize that and send it around, but it's a little bit trickier to split by a group because it was a group environment.
Okay, thank you.
We talk a lot about the differences between these people. It'd be helpful somewhere on here to be like, this is what all of them care about. Because definitely in the videos, pretty much all of them said they want to see an influencer who looks like them. Yeah, they've all pretty much said they want something that will last, or whatever it might be. So just like 3 to 5 things, just thinking to the point of like, if you are on a channel that can't target in these specific demographics, what's the kind of overall message that should get some of them at least a little bit? Yeah. So thinking about organic social, for instance, I can't hit all of them or will look wild. So what are the 3 to 5 things that all of them kind of hit on that we can work to a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the pieces that we're doing as part of the brand work is that brand narrative and a kind of hierarchy of messaging. There has to be one thing that we're known for, and that any person, regardless of if they're in that group or that group, goes, oh, flip-flop, they do this, or they stand for this. So there will be something at the top of the page, which is that here's what drives us, and it is a message. Obviously, it has to be a much less targeted message because you're trying to land a benefit that's wider. And then underneath it, the hierarchy has kind of got, right, when you're then in a channel where you can target, you can take the same message but notch it more this way, or you can take the message and notch it more that way. So we're working on what that thing is that sits on the top. We've got some really nice ideas around how we can develop comfort, because I know comfort is the thing, but it's not the sexiest thing. It's a little bit static. It's not a thing that's going to kind of get these women excited. So what are the new ways that we can help people understand that feeling comfortable is not just something that happens by chance? Like there's a shitload of work that goes into it in the room next to us here and Dr. Kim's team to make sure that the word that you say at the end of the day is comfortable, but there's loads that's happened before that. So we're doing lots of work around energy on that, and the way that something that was definitely all these women had in common is they just don't want to be stopped from doing all the things they do, whether it's the family side of things, whether it's their social life. So this story around the energy and actually enabling you to just not have to worry about that part of your body giving up on you through the day, it's probably the area that we're going into. Because if you put a message at the top about plantar fasciitis or whatever you call it, then you're going into a very, very niche group. But equally, there's a group there that would respond unbelievably well to that message. So we're working on that now, and that's one of the biggest challenges of that brand project, is trying to nail what is the central idea that all the little things can do.
So if we were to think about just picking up your point, Poonam, it's almost like we need the same but different slide, right? Where the same bit, the thing that connects them all, is where we create the constant truth. Wherever we turn up, we say the same thing, and the bit where they're different is just how we frame that truth. So different people have slightly different needs. But my real question, Luce, and maybe this is something which between Georgie and Mez through Kareem and Danielle can help with, is it's been very, very recent history that any money's really been spent on media bringing new people into the brand. We've only really been doing it for the last 3 months or so from FMO, Sandal and Sneaker. And when we saw a higher uptake on new consumers coming into the brand than we have for a long time. It was relatively broad reach, the targeting within it, certainly the outdoor. But it'd be interesting within this pack to see what we can learn there, because there was some insights off the back of it that start saying when you spend, because a lot of these people don't actually even know you, think about you, you can start generating more traffic even before you start getting your messaging and your targeting right. There is a latent desire for you.
Yeah, we actually have some really good results that we're looking at for the QBR at the moment with that Germany. So, we ran, not huge amounts of money, but new customers up like 50% year on year. Like, it's just a real case study for if you overinvest and spend, what we can deliver. So I can share that with you, Phil, once I've got it all typed up. I've been doing it today.
If you can forward that in mine and Lisa's direction, that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's never a bad idea having great proof that spending money on marketing works.
My favourite.
I know. It's amazing we have to remind people all the time that.
Well, that's very true. Lucy, we have 10 valuable minutes left. I wonder whether you want to spend 3 of it just quickly telling the guys about the claims project, and then maybe 7 of it whipping through the men's side of this.
Okay, let's do men's while I'm still in this deck, and then I will cover off some complaints. So there's a couple of things to take away from the men. So this can be very quick. So the actual segments, again, they're the same. The attitudinal things are the same. It's still those same 5 groups. We'll still focus probably on 3 of them, but I know that the amount of energy that we spend and money we spend on men is much, much smaller than women. But there's 2 really big, interesting things that came out of the research in men that differs from the women. A lot of the attitudinal stuff, very similar. A lot of the brands they like, quite similar. There's 2 big things that are different. So firstly, the way that men respond to comfort, Phil and I were staggered by this, just hadn't crossed our mind at all. You heard all of those women talk about comfort somehow, whether it was, yes, it's really important to me and I look for it, or whether it was, no, it doesn't bother me that much, more about the style. But every one of them mentioned comfort as being a factor when they're buying shoes. Men do not. So they do not have this fear or experience of how shit your day can be if you've had uncomfortable shoes on. It's just not there. If you think of the number of pairs of shoes that a man may own, there's far fewer silhouettes, there's far fewer types of shoes, and it's just much simpler. He's never had something that's been super uncomfortable before, and as a result of that, they don't see comfort as something that's compelling because it's just pursued. And we had a big wow moment over this because this brand is all about comfort, or has been in the past. And apart from a very, very small subset of these men who've got specific foot problems, and again, that was mostly very, very old men that we spoke to, it's just not on people's radar. If men are tending to live in sneakers, trainers, running shoes, they might have a pair of boots, a couple of pairs of smart shoes, but ultimately they're all shoes that have got the capacity to be pretty comfortable. So they're just, a message around comfort was not compelling for them at all. The second one was tech. So the women respond, especially, some groups more than others, but the women, there was an understanding that technology that made you more comfortable was relevant to an everyday shoe, again, because you've had that experience of what that's not like. When we started showing assets and talking about tech and shoes to men, they immediately only go to like a performance running shoe. They do not see any need for kind of technology in an everyday shoe, because the everyday shoes they're wearing, they don't seem uncomfortable to them, and therefore there's not a problem to solve. I think these are the 2 biggest things to remember on the male side, which is quite interesting from a brand positioning point of view, because what FitFlop has is technology that makes us comfortable. Guess what? The men are like, unless I'm running, don't need technology, and I've never really been uncomfortable. So this was very interesting. Apart from that, we saw some quite similar themes among those 3 groups. So classic style seeker, again, I'd say this group was an even older skew than the women. I've got a picture in a minute, I think, of some of the men in this group. This was an even older skew. So fashion just not a priority at all. When you really dig on fashion and ask this person about like what fashion means and what it is, it's really old school stuff like, well, I'd always wear a button-up shirt if it's a formal event, and I polish my shoes on the weekend. Like this is quite a crew. Very much an in-store shopper, and you know, he's never looking for new brands. He's wildly disengaged. Far less engaged in fashion than the female classic style seeker who still wanted to be well put together, and she did care. This guy just really not got any time for it. The style setter man is all about his appearance, so that translated through into things like going to the gym, into more likely to be interested in kind of male skincare, grooming, that sort of thing. That kind of stereotype just pulled through beautifully there. Work hard and play hard. That's someone who's hitting the gym, still going out with his mates, and still holding down quite a big job. So that, you know, that ambitious thing carried across there too. Very confident, mixes lots of brands all together because he knows how to. And we saw a really big number here of people that followed and got style inspiration from musicians. Bands and musicians were a really big thing to this group. You can see the mix of brands that group wears is really, really diverse. The Time Poor Progressive man was more similar to the Time Poor Progressive woman, in that didn't want to look like a dad, and old school, but equally doesn't want to be wearing just the same as everybody else, and was looking for slightly more elevated basics than kind of what he might have bought when he was younger. All about the trainers, but within the trainers would have different types of trainers for different occasions, which we saw with a few of these groups. Not really that into influencers, just didn't sort of feel they hugely, because he sort of felt like dad influencers were very stereotypical and he's more interesting than that, so tended to kind of not go for those and instead would kind of get inspiration from his peers. You can see some slightly more classic but cool brands for him versus the trendy ones. We have got way more than, but I knew we wouldn't have time to do it. So just to give you a quick idea, there are some similar ideas across the two, but I think the main difference for us was this realization that it just isn't the same fear of discomfort that women have.
Tim, where are you? Where are you sitting these days? I know where I am. Unfortunately, I'm definitely on the right.
I think I'm. Oh, I don't know. I'd like to think I don't fit into any of these categories easily, but probably in the middle somewhere. Interestingly, though, going back to your first point, Lucy, do you think that sort of, I don't know how to put this, but means that we possibly shouldn't be going after men as aggressively? Because, like you said, it feels like the kind of key pillars of our brand aren't things that men are that concerned about.
I think it's a really, really big and good question for us to ask ourselves. When we showed creative to men, they did actually respond fairly well to some of the kind of more lifestyle creative that we had and thought it was cooler than they were expecting it to be. So when it's kind of comms that are going into the tech and the kind of detailed stuff around this, we just couldn't catch their attention at all. They did actually quite like some of the kind of lifestyle creative. So I think we do have something, we have a way of grabbing them in, but it may not be the same kind of narrative that I think the women works, but I'm going to let Phil answer that very big strategic question.
I think from my side, it comes down to which bit of the story we tell to whom, right? If we, and hopefully if we have time, Luce can just quickly touch on the claim side of it. Our product does something pretty unique and different, and it does because we start with biomechanics and ergonomic design, and all of our product does the same thing, which is effectively reduce the amount of strain that you have to put on your muscles and therefore creates much more efficient movement. Now, depending how I want to tell that story, I can tell it in a way which probably connects pretty well with men who tend to like tech based on tech that it enhances their performance, not just stops them feeling a load of pain. So I think we have the core story to tell. It's how we choose to tell it and which of those audiences we choose to go after. I think we would have a very tough time in that younger developing audience for men. I think we've got a really good chance for the audience which I sit squarely in, which is that one on the right, that time poor progressive, if and only if we tell our story differently to we do today. Because if we don't, we end up doing what we're doing right now, which is developing a very mediocre men's business. But we will be within the brand work. We will be considering that group. We will be creating a plan and an approach and assets and messaging, which we believe should give us a really good shot in the game to go after them. The proof will be in the pudding whether we're successful.
Rachel has a hand up.
It's only a quickie. I was just thinking, obviously the survey's been done in the US and UK, but obviously like India and the Middle East is massive for menswear and APAC. And I wonder where they sit, whether it be more comfort than tech. It's just a question, because obviously the style of shoe they go after is more the open toe shoes. But yeah, it's just, I'm kind of just thinking about it, really, just raising the question.
Yeah, I mean, would love to do this research absolutely everywhere, but there is definitely such a thing as too much data.
Yeah, I know.
But I think it's something that you might want to consider once you kind of got what you think a central idea is that works, that you can then start sprouting slightly different regional variations of it. But yeah, you're right that the type of shoe chosen is probably skewed there by the fact that we did test Western markets only, right?
Poor Lucy has this horrible experience where every meeting I find a new thing to try and get her to do before she leaves us, which is sort of at the end of August. So as well as looking at, we'll come back with how we will do ongoing health tips, how we will break down some of these ages. It would be great, Lucy, if you can use some of your brain to think about what a process might look like if we went to some of our distributor partners and said, look, we have all this data for our two primary markets. Let's have a look at what is the same and then where the differences are in your markets. I would be surprised, everyone, if we have the budget or the inclination to go and do a full ground up study to this level. But particularly for key city markets, it's surprising how similar a lot of this stuff will show up.
And you should be able to find these things if you keep it based on characteristics, not demographics. That's why I keep going on about attitudes and characteristics, because that's the most important thing, and that should transfer across cultures.
Yeah. We have come to the end of our time today. If anyone has any follow-up questions, please send them direct to Lucy. Lucy, if you don't mind sharing this recording with everyone on the original invite. And I'm sure everyone would say it if they held the mic, but thank you very much for that. I always find that stuff super inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Feel better, Phil.
Thank you. I'll be in tomorrow. All right.
Bye.
Okay, like you got so much eye staring. It's the only ones actually sitting in front of me in the room.
You're gonna come round and then it got a bit like perilous to get.
Like I was interviewing you slightly.
Yeah.
It was